Welcome to Back to the Text Themselves, a series on phenomenology. Today we're examining Chapter 3, Part A, Section 17 to 18 of Heidegger's Being and Time. In the last video, we discussed Dasein's absorption in the everydayness of being in the world. An examination of this everydayness discloses a particular mode of being for beings called readiness to hand, which contrasts with the more disengaged and objectifying mode of present to hand. We ended with a consideration of the surrounding world that constitutes the facticity of our always already being in a world that is replete with meaning. Today, we'll consider the manner in which this meaning of things is disclosed. As such, in this video, I address the following. 1. How do signs function to disclose the relation between things? 2. How is the relevance of something disclosed through its significance? And 3. What does it mean to let something be relevant? This channel addresses works of philosophy and psychoanalysis. Each video, organized by 3 questions, examines a small section of text, unpacking concepts and theories as we gradually move through entire books. If you're looking for more than summaries and instead want to dive deeply into these challenging texts, then please consider supporting this work by liking and sharing this video and subscribing to my channel. Also, if you have the means and desire to, you can support this work on Patreon. The link is below in the description. In the universe of Batman, the bat signal is projected into the air using a spotlight with a bat-shaped covering over it. The bat signal has a relation to the crime-fighting vigilante Batman. Turning it on calls Batman's attention. This is the specific reference of the relation between the bat signal and Batman. It's a sign that does not merely indicate the character of Batman, it's also a sign that performs a function. It has a kind of serviceability and usability. The relevance of the bat signal in calling Batman's attention is for the purpose of fighting crime in Gotham City. The bat signal obtains this relevance from the matrix of relations it's a part of, what will be called its significance. This matrix of relations includes the function of the police and the fact that it's not up to the task of fighting crime without the assistance of Batman, that Gotham is a kind of city that is overrun by crime, that Batman is a crime fighter who operates outside of the constraints of the law. All these come together as a world that precedes and gives rise to the meaningfulness that allows the bat signal to have its relevance. Finally, Commissioner Gordon lets the bat signal be relevant within this situation. The signal gives its meaning in disclosing itself to Commissioner Gordon, who approaches it in care and heedful circumspection. I offer this example because we're about to address several overlapping ideas that can be difficult to distinguish. So with this example in mind, let's take up our first question. Relations concern the way something can be described in terms of or in connection to another thing. Understanding is arrived at through a context of relations that directs Dasein to and in order to, which grasps the potentiality for things. One kind of relation is that of reference, which concerns the way one approaches the readiness to hand of tools. So in the example provided, we have the relation between the bat signal and Batman. The reference of the bat signal is in its signaling to Batman in order to call his attention. Serviceability and usability are 2 different kinds of reference. Serviceability is the what for of a tool that determines its suitability for certain tasks. Usability is the wherefore of a tool or its specified purpose. Both of these are distinct from another kind of reference called indicating. Indicating is a kind of showing or pointing to that may or may not have a use function associated with it. When asked what a tree is, I can point to one. The pointing itself is not useful other than for assigning content to a set of sounds. Signs may combine all of these kinds of reference relations. Signs belong to the totality of useful things. However, signs are not just one useful thing among many, but in their readiness to hand, make the surrounding world accessible to circumspection. Heidegger provides his own illustration using a vehicle with a turn signal, a sign that's useful in indicating the direction the car will head next. Understanding it is not achieved by studying its features, nor even at looking over to where the arrow points, even though it's an indication of that spatial region. Rather, its serviceability and usability are in communicating to others the impending turn of the vehicle and required yielding or slowing down of other vehicles. The sign here functions like a tool in the manner of our heedful dealings within our everydayness. As such, signs are not things that merely stand in an indicating relationship to another thing. Rather, to quote Heidegger, they are useful things which explicitly bring a totality of useful things to circumspection, so that the worldly character of what is at hand makes itself known at the same time. They indicate wherein we live, what our heedfulness is concerned with, and directs us to their relevance. And so, speaking of relevance, let's take on our second question. Section 18 discusses the concepts of relevance and significance. The fact that the being of things is disclosed in being referred to something else entails a kind of relevance. Relevance is the character of the being of things at hand. More fundamental than a reference, relevance is an ontological determination of the being of these beings and is only disclosed based on the totality of meanings previously discovered. Heidegger's example here is the hammer, which has to do with hammering, and hammering has to do with fastening something, and fastening something has to do with protecting oneself against bad weather, say if you're building a shelter. The relevance of the thing at hand is uncovered only on the basis of a foregoing appreciation of the entire complex of relevance, or what is called significance or meaningfulness. The what for of the hammer as a thing for hammering is a for the sake of which, that concerns providing shelter for Dasein, and as such is always in relation to Dasein's concern for its own being. One may consider relevance as the finality or purpose of a thing. The notion of reference and relevance sound fairly similar here. The way I've come to understand the difference at the moment is that reference concerns the understanding of a relation between things, whereas relevance concerns the purpose or meaning of something within the context of the surrounding world and worldliness. So reference seems to address the ontic dimension of things, whereas relevance seems to entail the ontological. So let's return to our bat signal example. Maybe that will help clarify this a little bit more. So the bat signal is in reference to Batman by signaling him to come. The relevance of the bat signal is its being for the purpose of having Batman fight crime in Gotham City. But this relevance acquires its meaning from the significance of the world in its totality. This includes the nature of crime, the function of the police, the role of the law, etc. If I don't have a preceding sense of this world, then it becomes more difficult for me to understand the relevance of the bat signal. If you recall back to videos on the introduction, this analysis by Heidegger is reflective of his entire method. Remember, Heidegger is interested in the question of being in general, and more specifically, the meaning of being. But to answer this question, he must examine a particular being, Dasein, in our everyday averageness. But one of the fundamental characteristics of Dasein is that we already have some preliminary understanding of the being of our being. So having addressed the notion of relevance, what does Heidegger mean when he speaks of the letting something be relevant? It means taking care of things in such a way that allows their relevance to be disclosed. This doesn't mean to produce something, to impose a relevance onto a thing, but is a manner of discovering the relevance of something in its readiness to hand, to let the thing be encountered in its being. This letting be is less an active intervention of the will than it is a receptive openness to the being of things in the self-disclosure of their relevance. However, it's not completely passive either, as to use Merleau-Ponty's term, there is a certain comportment vis-a-vis the things at hand, what Heidegger will call a kind of higher activity that involves resoluteness, endurance, and steadfastness. Again, let us turn to my example one last time. The only way the relevance of the bat signal is disclosed to Commissioner Gordon is because of his care and heedful circumspection. The bat signal gives its meaning to Gordon in his letting the signal be relevant. The being of beings only discloses its meaning to the one who's concerned for its being. As we'll see, this analysis represents a fundamental departure from the Cartesian interpretation of the world as res extensa, the extended things. And so in the next video, we're going to take up this difference between the Cartesian approach and Heidegger's. I'd like to thank the following for providing their support of this channel on Patreon. And as always, I want to thank you for watching. Until next time, be well.